You're a startup founder. You think your product is amazing and feel like more people should be buying. But the road is long and slow. It feels like you're stuck. There's always one thing I ask startup founders. Have you talked to your customers? They almost always say, heck yes, we talk to our customers all the time. But what I find is they're either selling or trying to improve their product. These are not customer-focused conversations. If we can get curious about our customers, then we can uncover critical insights that will help us build to the next round. I'm Anna Firmenov, and welcome to Building with Buyers, a show about startup growth where I'll explore how customers help startups build to the next round. Udi Ledergor, you came back and I appreciate you so much. And I love your red sweater and it matches to your new book that you have out now, Courageous Marketing. We'll talk about that. But first, let me just introduce you to folks who doesn't know you. I don't know who doesn't. Everybody knows you. So Udi is Chief Evangelist and former CMO at Gong. And Gong allows you to centralize all your revenue workflows in the Revenue AI platform. It is a very big company now. It's a unicorn. Last valuation was $7.25 billion. So when I did my search on unicorn valuation of Gong, I must have got the wrong thing from ChatGPT. Who knows? Because it's definitely way higher than what I thought. Total funding amount is $583 million. And wow. So it's been a long journey for you. I wanted to ask you, Chief Evangelist, what's your role now as Chief Evangelist?
First, thanks for having me back, Anna. Delighted to be here again.
Of course.
Yeah. Chief Evangelist at Gong is really an extension of marketing, which means I support the company goals and the marketing goals. And unlike my prior role of CMO, which I held for almost 7 years, I now get to focus on a few of the things that I really love doing, spreading the good word of Gong, like I'm doing here today on the podcast, like I'm doing at a bunch of industry conferences. I get to meet with a lot of our executive customers and talk to them about the executive use cases of Gong so that they understand how to use the product better. And I'm supporting the company in any way that I can without the burden of managing the big team and budget.
Sounds like a wonderful position to be in.
It is.
I mean,
It
if
really
you
is.
like to be out there, if you like to talk at conferences, if you like to help people at the executive level, right? It really seems like an amazing role. So
Absolutely.
awesome. So if you also want to listen, Udi has been on the show before. Check out episode 156. It's called Gong's Marketing Evolution from Early Stage to Unicorn. And in that one, we really did dive into what was it like at Gong in those early days? How did you start the go-to-market strategy, content marketing strategy, which I personally loved so much. And sometimes I bring that up as an example because I work with early stage startups and everybody starts somewhere, right? Just like Gong started somewhere, and just the beauty of taking something like a 5-slide deck and knowing that you're differentiating value and kind of how you were able to use the platform and use your knowledge and use data as part of your content marketing efforts and how that worked so well. I use that as an example with my clients. So
Awesome. Glad we could inspire.
Very inspirational. So now today on the Building with Buyers podcast, I'm exploring the role that customers play in helping startups build to the next round of growth beyond revenue, of course, because customers is revenue and you need those. But a lot of my work focuses on customers and customer research and insights and helping to inform positioning, messaging, and go-to-market strategy. But with you, I want to talk to you about just in general, in what ways have you seen that customers helped Gong build to the next round? And you could start in the beginning. I love those conversations, the early days with customers. You can start in the middle, towards the nowadays, right? Anywhere you want.
So there's an old saying in marketing that customers are your best marketers. Whatever they say is going to do you a bigger service than anything your founders or marketers or other employees can say. And that's 1,000,000% true. And we realized that at Gong, when I joined the company, I was employee number 13 and we had 11 paying customers. Not a very big number, but we knew that because we're building a new category and doing something that very few people understood, we need to get a lot of social proof out there and we need to get those customer success stories, those raving fan experiences out there. So here's what I did on, I think it was my second week at work. My CEO was traveling to an industry conference. I believe it was SaaStr of 2016 or 2017. We didn't even have a budget to fly me there. So it was just my CEO. It was that early at Gong. And he said, I think I'm going to meet a few customers there that are supposed to be there. What should I do to kind of grab their testimonials? So I said, I'm going to send to your hotel room a lapel mic, a tripod for your iPhone, and a light. And you're going to use those three things. I will send you a diagram of how to set things up. So I want the customer sitting with our booth backdrop behind them so we can see the logo and try to find a quiet spot, but make sure the mic is close to them. And here are like 5 questions you can ask them. So he got to his hotel room, he took the equipment, set it up, did exactly as I told him. And he sent me from the conference like 12 video files. How did he send me 12? Because a couple of the customers actually had a few people there. Like they had a sales leader and a rev ops leader and a sales professional. So he managed to interview all of them. And he sent me those 12 videos and I sent them over to an editor. And within a week, we cleaned it up, added an intro and outro, and we had 12 customer testimonials ready to go on our website at a point where we had 11 actual customers. And those 12 customer videos were very, very important. So when he came back from the show, we already had 12 customer videos to go live on the website. And that is so important to have that early social proof for a young startup that's just getting started and needs to prove itself. So that's how we used customer stories very, very early on. And we just kept going. A lot of people think they need a big fancy platform. They need a community to engage people. Yeah, you can do that when you've got thousands of customers and you want to put some structure in it. But in the early days, just keep it simple. Use your iPhone, take a lapel mic, but make sure you're doing everything in your power to make the customers happy. And that happiness, that raving fandom is something you're going to be able to propel and amplify. And that's going to make everyone want to be part of that exclusive club and discover what great experience these customers are having and how can they join in on the fun.
Yeah, this resonates with me, and it makes sense that that's what you focused on in those early days. You have customers, even if it's just 11. And by the way, 11 is not that small. It's a pretty good
For
size.
a SaaS company, like a services business might be different, but for a SaaS company, 11 is okay.
It's okay, but they're still, I mean, that they trusted you. They decided to put down the money and buy, and you're early, and that's really hard to do. So they are the gold. And so that's why I like to focus on customers. Like, what the heck were they thinking? Why did they trust you? Why was the pain point so big for them? What makes them unique and different? One thing that comes to mind too, when you said give them a really good experience and make them really love the product and the support and just an overall great experience, it's part of the founder's job, it's part of marketing's job. One thing that I just talked to the co-founder of Tofu, and their earlier stage, they just raised their Series A funding round, but she talked about the surprise and delight weekly Friday meetings. And I'm like, that's beautiful. Surprise and delight. We forget about that. We forget about our customers so often. And it's just a quick meeting where you talk about in what ways can we surprise and delight our customers? And that goes a long way because you're consistent about it. You're thinking about that when we tend to just lose track of our customers and how we could surprise and delight them. And then once you do it, they're like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. Thank you so much. And then they're more likely to spread word of mouth, which is really the goal.
Yes. The good news is that the bar is pretty low out there. There's not many customers that are really consistently trying to delight, surprise, and create raving fans out of their customers. It's been a core operating principle at Gong since day one, and it gets harder to do when you're very big. Some people think, oh, if I just get enough resources, no, it's not. It actually becomes more complicated to keep everyone aligned on the same North Star and remember that this is their job. But if you really embed it deeply in everything the customers do and everything our employees do, We onboard our employees with our operating principles. We recognize them annually. Our outstanding Gongsters or employees of the year, they get recognized for creating raving fans. And we use that as promotion criteria. And it's one of our operating principles that we use every day at the company. It's hard to do, but it's so worth it because we see the customer love come back to us.
What do you think was like it's so hard to do, but there might be like one or two things that helped you be able to do this to create the raving fans with the employees, right? But also with customers. Like, how do you do that? How do you create raving fans?
I wish I had a quick hack to give you, but I don't. The truth is that it's just a lot of deliberate work from day one, emphasizing that every single employee at the company is expected to create raving fans. And what that means is that product doesn't get to sit back, even if they're in a different continent, like they are at Gong, they're in Israel, which is almost opposite hours from the West Coast. Some companies in that situation would take the easy route and say, well, forward the customer request. We'll see it tomorrow when we come into work. We'll investigate. We'll take care of it. No, our product team is up at all hours of day and night as needed. And they will jump on directly with calls. And they still do this today. They jump on calls with customers and prospects to understand how we're meeting their expectations, where we're falling short. And they will promise them a timeline to a resolution. They will deliver on it. They will follow up to make sure that customer implemented the solution. And that's how we create raving fans, whether you've got 11 customers or 10,000 customers. That's how you do it. Every employee in the company needs to understand that their job is to create raving fans.
So you talked about the conference, like customer content that was created at that conference, the videos that went up on the website, and that was more early stage. Is there anything else that comes to mind when I say customers helping Gong build to the next round as the company has gotten bigger?
Yeah, we started taking those early customer stories and embedding them in everything that we did. So it's not just putting them on the website, it's taking them to industry conferences. So let's say we're going to a Gartner or Forrester conference, rather than us getting on stage and pitching our latest product, which is what most vendors do, and it's kind of boring. We use that slot to put a customer on stage. And oftentimes we won't even come on stage because we know that the audience wants to hear from their peers. They don't want to hear from a vendor where they're biased and pitching and telling you what they think you want to hear. They want to hear from a respected peer, ideally from a brand that they know who's about the same size in the same industry in the same geo. And they want to hear their success story. And if Gong is woven into that story, then that's fantastic. But that's what they really care about. They want to hear from practitioners of how they're doing things. And so we looked for ways to embed Gong in all those stories. And I remember going to a bunch of conferences that we didn't even sponsor and hearing on pretty much every single panel at a sales conference, someone was talking about their success with Gong. And that made me very, very proud. And I could see the impact that was having on the audience.
Yeah. This is like a big tactic that's used. I work with a lot of education technology startups. And so they do conferences like crazy. I mean, like B2B SaaS does conferences, but EdTech does conferences. And so having the customer come on stage and talk is huge. Having like superintendents of school districts come on stage and talk because they have that network. They have people that trust them already and they look to them and they see themselves as innovative, right? That's the innovative superintendents, innovative principals, innovative district leaders that want to actually talk about the cool work that they're doing to change their communities, to change their schools and their school districts. And I think it's the same thing. Like, that's why it's not hard to find those innovators, those customers that are innovators, and bring them on stage and talk to their peers because they want to share how they're doing amazing work. Would you agree with that?
Yes. And of course, the prerequisite to all of that is to have a product that really delights them. I think a lot of people think that marketing can help them fake success while they catch up with product. That's a very thin band-aid you can put on for a very short amount of time. You actually need to focus on the product stuff, make sure that you're delighting your customers, and then bring in marketing to amplify those raving fan voices. But marketing won't cover for a mediocre product experience.
Yeah. One thing I've been thinking about is like, I work with clients and they're like, yeah, we need to get more referrals. And it's nice when it kind of organically happens versus, can you please refer us? Can you please, right? What do you think is like the necessary ingredient to create that natural, organic referral system? Because I imagine that that's how Gong grew to be the size that it is, right? Because there was like a more organic, you weren't pushing people or asking necessarily. It kind of organically happened where somebody told somebody else, and there's this like organic spread.
We experimented and we found that when we did push for it, we got pushed back. So customers don't like when we kind of push and ask them for a referral. Customers don't typically recommend software products over beer to their friends. This might come as a shocker to other vendors, but it's usually not the number one
No.
topic. I know. So we do have links within our product which say, you can refer and earn and get a gift card or something if you refer customers, and that's used anecdotally. I would say that we found two things that really work better. One is professional referral programs from people who this is part of their income. So they're typically not a salesperson at a large company using Gong because, especially in large companies, they have lots of policies where they can't accept cash incentives from vendors and do stuff like that, especially in public companies, like we can't get near them. But we found that there are folks like sales trainers and systems integrators and other partners that love working with us, that they come in and the customers actually want them to recommend different systems. So if they can recommend Gong and also earn a cut on the way, they love doing that. So that's become a big part of our partner business. And then the second thing is really the indirect referrals. The indirect referrals of if someone's watching their LinkedIn feed and they see someone they know doing a testimonial video about Gong, or in ways that we encourage this, like we have once a year, the Golden Gong Awards, which is different creative use cases of revenue AI. And people see someone they know from another company and then they go like, oh, I should call her because I was thinking about Gong and now I see she's a raving fan. So I trust her. So that's either enough for me to go buy it, or I'll just give her a call and ask about her experience. So those indirect referrals actually work a lot smoother and more organically than pushing at a specific date and time, asking customers for referrals.
Yep. Where is Gong placing big bets this year? I like to ask this question because, well, I always like to ask this question. Like in the previous podcast, I like to ask this, and then the current podcast, because you're placing big bets in different areas. And I like to explore, like, of course, you're placing big bets with, as we talked about earlier, customer experience, right? Making sure that you're creating that experience that creates raving fans. But where else? What are you guys going big into?
Our three priorities for this year as a company: one is redefining our category boundaries. So, what started almost 10 years ago as conversation intelligence and then matured into our category launch of revenue intelligence is now becoming what we're calling revenue AI. Some of the analysts are calling it revenue orchestration. But the point is that a lot of previously separate categories like revenue intelligence, sales engagement, sales forecasting, all of those are now converging and others are being added. And we are working very hard to earn the continued trust of our customers and their trust not only of our product, but of our brand as the leading company in revenue AI. So that is redefining the category boundaries this year. That's number one. Number two for us is to continue our ascent to very large strategic customers. We already serve, I think, 4 out of the top 10 Fortune 10 customers and thousands of large customers across industries. So continuing to sell to larger enterprises who don't typically buy from young startups. And we're now at the point where our solution is fully enterprise security and privacy compliance ready. That's a secondary focus. And then the third one is our industry expansion. So for many years, like many startups, we sold primarily to other startups and other tech companies. And now we have a fast growing segment of non tech companies as the technology has become more mature and prevalent outside of tech. We're seeing customers in healthcare, in manufacturing, and financial services buy our software. And we're making lots of strides in those industries this year.
How do you sell to very large strategic customers. Like you as the chief evangelist, that's part of your role, right? I
It
remember
is.
having Island on my podcast, and we were talking about more brand strategy work. But also, we talked about the sales, their go to market efforts, and how different and unique when you're selling to chief information security officers. You can't do ebooks and nurturing sequences and download this asset and LinkedIn posts. And maybe you can. I don't know. I'm making that part up. But there was a very unique approach that we talked about for how to actually sell to the very large strategic customer and especially at the C-suite level there. So, how do you approach that?
Well, yes, enterprise sales is a very different beast from SMB or mid market sales. First, the people managing the sales process have to have a very high level of business acumen because they're speaking to these very senior business leaders and they have a bullshit meter from a mile away. So if you send a 23-year-old SDR who's this is their first job out of school trying to sound authoritative to a middle-aged IT director or a chief revenue officer, that's rarely going to land well. So you need to make sure that the people who are reaching out, who are writing the content, who are making the calls and taking the calls, they have the business acumen that they can quickly create trust and rapport with these senior business leaders. Otherwise, you're not going to get a start to this sales process. And then all the marketing tactics that you mentioned, they actually do play a part, although in different weights, as in a smaller, say, mostly self led small business purchase. If I'm a VP of sales at a 20-person company and I've got 3 folks on my team, I don't have time for multiple calls and a long sales process. I want to quickly read the content, compare a couple of best and final options, pick one, buy it, and move on. But if I'm a CRO and I'm managing 1,000 people in a company of 20,000 people, I have lots of people who need to be involved who are going to use the software, implement the software, pay for the software, train on the software. So I expect the vendors to have documentation for each persona, know how to conduct themselves with each one of these personas. So what we do for a lot of these senior folks is we curate smaller events, say 15, 20 people, where we focus on curating the audience so they're all birds of a feather, same role, same industry, same geo. And so we do this roadshow. We're doing one in spring with one of our partners. We're doing one in summer on our own. We're hitting all these cities where we have lots of customers and prospects, and we bring them to a small, intimate dinner where they can let their guards down. It's not being recorded, there's no stage or anything. And there's just open conversations over dinner and drinks and sharing of best practices. Sometimes we'll provide a conversation starter, but they really, really appreciate the platform that we give them to exchange notes with their peers that they don't often get to do. And then they go back home reinvigorated with new ideas, and they're a lot more appreciative of our role as consultants to their business. So when it does come the time for them to evaluate software in our domain, we're usually the first brand that they think of, or at least that's what we're trying to create, because we've already shown them the value that we bring as consultants, as bringing them together with their peers, as sharing with them the latest education that they need to drive their organizations to success.
This like roadshow in different cities and the small intimate dinner, I love this. I think another flavor of this and something I've been a part of with an early stage startup is customer events. So also something that just like stays small, stays intimate. We did one in New York and there will be more coming, but it is a way to, well, first seeing people in person is like a whole new level of different these days because everybody is working from home, right? And especially in B2B SaaS and technology companies. So having this like small, intimate group of people come together, having this customer event where you share your experiences, share how it's going, share like I brainstorm ideas, like that's value for customers. And I think what you just talked about, that's kind of similar where you keep it small, you keep it intimate, it's a dinner, but same idea. I think that's another way to have customers involved and have that focus. And that really does help the startup build to the next round of growth because there's value exchange in both sides. What I found to be really cool there was customers taught us how they're using the product. Like, we don't always know. We can like see they're using this feature, they're using it, but really having a presentation and sharing. Like, we take it to conferences and we put it up there and then people come by and this is how we use it, right? That was eye-opening. So I think like that there's this value exchange across everyone, the company, the customers, the prospects at these intimate events.
Yeah.
Awesome. So that was kind of like on a tangent, and I appreciate you. And when I heard you mention Chief Evangelist, what you do, that's a big part of your role in selling to large strategic customers. I wanted to just ask you that question. So, placing big bets for Gong, we talked about that. What about you? Where are you, Udi, placing big bets this year? And I imagine we might talk about your book a little bit, but yeah, where are you placing big bets?
Yes. So my primary focus this year is to support Gong's company goals. So I'm helping Gong expand our category boundaries and extend our reach into large enterprises and our industry reach. And I do this by speaking at a bunch of sales conferences and executives and thought leadership and all those things. That remains my primary focus. My other focus this year, as you already alluded to, is the book that just came out, Courageous Marketing, the B2B Marketer's Playbook for Career Success. It's available everywhere books are sold. It came out on April 10th. And here's how
Congrats, by the way, on that, because it's not
thank you.
easy to write a book. I've heard. I've never written a book myself, but I've heard. So congrats.
It's not for the faint of heart, for sure. So here's the story, the backstory behind the book. For 20 years, I've been a B2B marketing operator. I've led 5 teams. I've done consulting, advising, mentoring to hundreds of entrepreneurs and marketers. And everyone is trying to get a piece of me and just pick my brain for 30 minutes or an hour or get me to advise their startup or be on their board or whatever capacity they're interested in. And obviously, I only have so many hours a day. And I'm still working full time at Gong, and I have a family, and I do like sleeping and eating occasionally. So there's only so much of these meetings and roles that I can take. And for years, people were telling me, Udi, you should write a book. You've got all these great stories and advice about brand building and content and events and category. And I said, yeah, I kind of laughed, like, who has time to write a book? It really is a big time commitment. And then a couple of years ago, something changed, and I transitioned from my role as chief marketing officer to chief evangelist, my current role. And a few months into it, I realized that it's kind of now or never. I still have all these stories and all this experience fresh in my head. Most of it is still very relevant, even in the age of AI. And I have the time for the first time in 20 years of my B2B marketing career. I actually have some capacity because I'm not running a 60-person team, which leaves you very little time for anything else. I have the time to sit down and write the book. So this journey started about 15 months ago. I sat down and started doing a brain dump. Like, here are all the topics I want to talk about. And I just sat down for days and dumped everything I had to say about it. I went through a writing program because I want to make sure I'm producing something that's going to be a delight to read. I want to create raving fans of the book, not just send out boring blueprints. And so I spent like 6 months on that first draft. And then I realized, together with my editors, that while there was a lot of great information and insights there, it was somewhat single dimensional because it was all what I said, what I think, and what I did. And they said, hey, you talk about all these kind of examples from other CMOs and other team members. Why don't you go interview them, bring their perspectives into the book? It'll make it much richer and we'll have some varied perspectives. So for the next few months, that's what I did. I interviewed about 15 people for the book, top CMOs like Michelle Tate from MailChimp and Trisha Gelman from Box and Carrie Lou Dietrich from Atlassian and Dave Gerhardt, which we all know formerly from Drift, and a whole bunch of team, as well as some of the star team members that I had the good fortune of working with at Gong. Devin Reed, who headed up Gong Labs for 3 years, Chris Orlov, who started Gong Labs, Sheena Badani, who defined the revenue intelligence category, Vince Chan, who managed our social media, and lots of other people. Russell Banzon, who managed demand gen at Gong. So I got all these perspectives, and of course, my editors were right. The book became a lot richer and more interesting and dynamic with all these stories and perspectives. To make a long story short, that kind of took me to looking at different publishing options. And I decided to self-publish my book to keep the creative control and to keep the schedule under my control and do everything that I could just to get it into the right hands without all these middle people in the middle. And so that's what happened. And last few months, it was the really final push of getting endorsements on the book, which is a fun and also scary process because you're going to ask your friends and family, they're going to say whatever you want about the book, but unless all your friends and family are really famous authors or CMOs, you also need to reach out to more distant circles of people that maybe you don't have a personal relationship with. And so I did both. So there's kind of mandatory CMO endorsements that I really love and appreciate. But I also know that these are people in my network that they liked the book, but it was not terribly difficult getting their endorsement. And then there was the farther circle of some of the top business and marketing authors that I respect. And some of them have had their books for decades, like Robert Cialdini, author of Influence, and Daniel Pink, author of To Sell is Human, and most recently, The Power of Regret, which is a great book that I recommend. Nir Eyal, who's written about habits and distraction. And I reached out to all these people with little or no prior connection, and they were kind and sweet and read the book and decided it was good enough to put their name on it. And so you'll find all these people endorsing my book as well. And in the last few weeks, it's just mostly been the fun, hectic part of getting ready to promote the book, make sure there's enough reviews when it launches, doing great podcasts like this to get the word out there with really the, I guess, humble goal of inspiring as many people as I like, as I'm at a point in my career where I've still got a lot to accomplish, but I feel I've done a lot as an operator. And I am looking to give back to the community, to give back to other entrepreneurs and other marketers, and hopefully help them take the boring out of B2B. And this book will probably reach more people than I could ever mentor one-on-one or even meet in conferences. So judging by the thousands of pre-orders already made as we're recording this podcast, I think it's going to be well received.
I saw a LinkedIn post and you were like, whoa, everyone's loving this. And there's a ton of pre-orders and we crashed Amazon or something like that.
Pretty much.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading it. I wanted to ask you, why is it called Courageous Marketing? Tell me how you landed on that title. What makes marketing courageous? And does it have anything to do with customers? Because I'd love that, but it doesn't have to be. But yeah, what makes it courageous?
That's
marketing?
an interesting story. I think some authors, they know the topic or the title of their book when they get started. I did not. As I said, I didn't have this like one big idea, oh, I should go write a book about this and do some research. No, I had all these experiences, real life experiences that I brought in from my own experience and all the people that I interviewed. And I started dumping them. And I had a working title, which was not great.
What was it?
I'm a little embarrassed to say it was B2B marketing that doesn't suck.
Oh,
that was the working title of the book.
I mean, it's to the point.
It's to the point. I mean, it's kind of
it's what we strive towards.
Yeah, but it's kind of a low bar when you think about it. I mean, we don't want to do things that just don't suck. We want to do things that are outstanding, that are inspiring. And doesn't suck is not inspiring. And so that was my working title until I had a pretty advanced draft. And as I was reading it again and again and then again, and especially reading the stories of the team members that I was so lucky to work with, and they talked about the environment that we created together that allowed them to do their best work. The more I read it, the more I understood that this book was really about courage. And so marketing had to be in the title because we want to self-qualify the readers. I don't want gardeners picking up the book by mistake. I want marketers to pick it up. And so marketing kind of set that aside. I realized that what this book was about was building your courage as a marketer and having a strong, bold point of view on everything you do, from branding to messaging to tone of voice to event experiences to category building to brand campaigns. All these things, to do them exceptionally well, you need a level of courage, which is difficult to find many times, which is difficult to manage and align expectations on with your sales leaders, with your finance leaders, with your CEOs. And once I had that kind of coin drop moment of realizing that this book is about courage, everything came together a lot more neatly and the theme was clear. And then I kind of went back and worked on some of the transitions and connections to make sure that they make and stress the point that this is about finding your courage. That's when I kind of realized that I have something good in my hands, where there were no more doubts before. And then I sat down with my wonderful editor, Lori Todd, And she loved the new theme and she helped me rework the existing materials. She lovingly tore it apart and put it back together, and chapters that were no longer existed. And some of the material was left out, and new material she pushed me to create to make sure I fill in the blanks and make a coherent story. And I think I'm pretty happy with what we ended up with.
I love it. I think this is one of the themes that I'm actually seeing and hearing about more. This theme of courage, this theme of bland to bold is actually like, I think it's a website, blandtobold.com is a friend of mine's website. And it's always kind of been the goal. There's another book out there that I have been reading. It's called Audacious. It just says Audacious. So it could be for a gardener might pick it up
Right.
because they weren't thinking about calling it audacious marketing. And then there's another one that is like I don't like to swear on my show because then I have to like call it out that it's explicit content. So it's stand the F word out.
Hmm.
And so they're like different sort of along the same lines, right? And I think that really that's what we're trying to do is we're trying to be courageous with our marketing, because if we're not courageous enough, then our company is going to fail. I think that's really what it boils down to. Remember, you were on the last episode with me, episode 156, and I think what you said was marketing is using creativity to solve business problems.
Yes.
And that's hard, and you have to have courage in order to. Most people will be like, oh, I'm not that creative, right? But everybody has the potential to be creative. You just have to really believe that it's your creative intention and idea is going to make some change happen to solve some business problem, business challenge,
Yeah.
right?
So some people find it easier to conjure up these crazy ideas. I've come to realize that not everyone finds it easy, and that's okay. Some people are just good at their reports and dashboards and spreadsheets, and maybe they should be in finance or even in marketing. We need those people for marketing operations and reporting and analytics. So you can bring those people in, but I think finding sources of creativity is rarely the problem. It's feeling that you have the permission to be creative. And that's the finding the courage part, like making sure that you're in the right environment that not only tolerates that, but celebrates that and allows you to experiment and make trials and errors and learn from them rather than fearing for your job and being okay doing things that are not in the consensus, because great marketing that gets noticed is going to have some haters and you've got to be okay with that. There's a book called The Courage to be Disliked, which is not about marketing at all. It's a philosophy book, but I found it a really, really profound read because all of us have this need to be liked. And we sometimes end up doing really unnatural, weird things to be liked. It's okay to keep on wanting to be liked, but also having the courage to be disliked. And that gives us the freedom to do things the way we actually believe they should be done, knowing that not everyone's going to like us for it. So I guess I've written the marketing version of that, of how to create that environment and find your own environment and conjure up that courage to do things that are going to make your brand stand out, going to bring in customers, going to create raving fans, make your team and yourself a well-known brand in that world that you're in, even though you're going to accumulate a few haters along the way. And that's probably a sign that you're succeeding, because there's nobody successful who doesn't have a few haters.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know I have haters out there. Although LinkedIn is a very safe space, I will say, because that's where I've grown my audience and that's where I put out podcast video clips. And it's been a very safe space so far. And I've been doing it for 5 years. So I'm pleasantly surprised by that. But I'm sure there are trolls out there, there are haters, and the word of mouth is on the negative side. But that's fine. That's the work that we do, right?
Just to be clear, especially in a relatively clean environment like LinkedIn, very different from Twitter or other environments, the opposite of love is not hate. It's actually indifference. That is the thing to avoid. If you're getting a few love responses, but mostly indifference, that's the problem. Like you're not doing something edgy enough. You're not provoking enough of a discussion, enough emotions in your audience. So indifference is what I fear most, not a few haters. If I'm getting a few haters, means I'm doing something right. Means I've created some contrast, I've created some controversy. That's a good thing. We want to spark a conversation.
That is such a great point. That is why I try and push like apathy. I also talk about that is your biggest, early stage startups' biggest challenge. Like people that might get great value from what you're building don't understand what you're building, who it's for, or why they should even care. That's the biggest challenge. So love that point. Thank you for bringing that up. In the few minutes that we have, I would love to ask you, what's your favorite use case for using AI right now? How do you use it, Udi? Do you use it?
Yeah, of course. Of course. Got to give a plug to Gong here. I think an underutilized and underrated use case of revenue intelligence is using it to track your brand investments. So a lot of marketers would love to spend more investments on out of home advertising, TV, radio, lest I say Super Bowl, print, all that sort of stuff, events, podcast sponsorship. All those things are notoriously difficult to measure on your otherwise neat and tidy digital dashboards because finance partners are used to seeing things like social media ads and search ads and other investments show up very neatly on dashboards. And so a lot of marketers don't even work up the courage to go ask to make those brand investments. But when they see other companies making them, like, oh, that is so effective. I wish I could do that. And so my message here is that you can do that because if you use revenue intelligence to measure some of that impact, you use revenue intelligence to spot all the sales conversations that mentioned hearing your CEO on the podcast or mentioned seeing your Super Bowl commercial before they came to your website, you're getting some sort of ground estimate that you can use moving forward to determine ROI, even if it's not 100% precise. It will not keep you from doing the right things for your brand just because you struggle to measure them. So that's a use case that I use and I'm very excited about.
That's really cool. So it literally will pick up on folks that they have to either write it somewhere or mention it somewhere that's recorded, or like it picks up on the brand mentions or.
Correct.
Oh, wow.
It picks up on brand. When you have an enterprise sales motion like Gong and many other companies have, we have hundreds of sales conversations every week at the company. So if a podcast episode that we sponsored goes live, all I need to do is go in that week into Gong and search for the podcast name, and I'll pick up on all the customer conversations who mentioned listening to that podcast.
That's amazing. Well, thank you. I love that use case. And you have been wonderful. As usual, we did not have time for a question to me, which is unfortunate. So I might just email you because I love just to find out what do people want to know. If you have a question that you wanted to ask me, I'll email you afterwards. But if anybody wants to reach Udi, he's on LinkedIn, Udi Ledergor. And if you want to check out Gong for that AI use case, oh yes, and the book. So Gong is at gong.io. The book, you're wearing the red sweater. How could I forget even, right?
Yes.
Courageous Marketing. The book
Courageous Marketing is on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and everywhere books are sold. So go search up Courageous Marketing, and I'd love to hear your take on it.
I will search for it. I will purchase it or pre-order it, and I'm excited to dive into it. But Udi, you've been wonderful, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, Anne. Great to be here again.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Building with Buyers. New episodes drop weekly, so make sure you're following wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me on LinkedIn, Anna Furmanov. Visit my website to learn more about how to turn customer insights into positioning and messaging your buyers will understand. FurmanovMarketing.com. And don't forget to leave a review if you're loving the show.